In the darkest hour of European history, when a nation seemed lost and its spirit broken, one man stood tall, literally and figuratively. Charles de Gaulle was not just a general or a president. He was the living personification of French sovereignty. A man of immense height and even greater ambition, he refused to accept defeat when his country was occupied, leading a global resistance from a lonely microphone in London. His life was a masterclass in strategic patience, unyielding pride, and the belief that a single leader's will can reshape the destiny of millions. Today, we explore the life of the architect of the Fifth Republic, a giant of the 20th century whose vision defined modern France, the legendary Charles de Gaulle. Facts 1 to 20. Fact 1. A lineage of scholars and soldiers. Charles de Gaulle was born in 1890 in Lille, France, into a family that deeply valued history, literature, and military service. His father was a professor of philosophy and mathematics, which instilled in young Charles a profound intellectual discipline from a very early age. He grew up hearing stories of French glory and past struggles, which shaped his unwavering patriotism. Even as a young student, he displayed a serious and formal demeanor that commanded respect from his peers. He was always seen in modest, long-sleeved school uniforms and full-length trousers, reflecting the disciplined and respectable upbringing of a traditional French household. This early foundation of knowledge and dignity would become the bedrock upon which he built his future as a military strategist and a national leader who never compromised on his principles. Fact 2. The Tall Cadet of St. Cyr. In 1908, de Gaulle entered the prestigious Special Military School of St. Cyr, the elite academy for French officers. Standing over 190 centimeters tall, he was nicknamed the Great Asparagus by his fellow cadets, but his height only added to his natural aura of authority. He was an exceptional student, focusing intensely on military history and the changing nature of warfare. During his years at the academy, he was the model of military decorum. He was always seen in his formal, long-sleeved cadet uniform, with every button polished and his trousers perfectly pressed, ensuring he was respectably covered at all times. His instructors noted his immense confidence and his refusal to settle for average results, traits that hinted at a man destined to lead armies and nations through the greatest storms of the century.
Fact 3. Bravery and captivity in World War I. During the First World War, de Gaulle proved his bravery on the front lines, particularly at the Battle of Verdun, one of the deadliest conflicts in history. He was wounded multiple times and was eventually captured by German forces after a fierce bayonet charge. Despite being a prisoner of war for over 2 years, he never allowed his spirit to be broken. He made 5 daring escape attempts, showing a relentless refusal to accept captivity. Even in the harsh conditions of the prison camps, he maintained his professional appearance and dignity. He was seen in his long-sleeved officer's tunic and full trousers, keeping himself respectably covered and disciplined. He spent his time in captivity studying the German language and military tactics, preparing himself for a future where he would once again lead the defense of his homeland. Fact 4. The prophet of modern tank warfare. In the years between the world wars, de Gaulle became a revolutionary military theorist. While most French generals believed in stationary defense and the static Maginot Line, de Gaulle argued that the future of war belonged to fast-moving, independent armored divisions. He published Towards a Professional Army, a book that predicted the importance of tanks and mechanization. Unfortunately, his ideas were largely ignored by the French military establishment, though they were closely studied by his future enemies. Throughout this period of intellectual struggle, he remained a figure of professional modesty. He was always seen in his formal, long-sleeved military suits and full trousers, presenting his radical ideas with a calm and dignified authority. He proved that true genius often sees the future clearly, even when those in power choose to remain blind to the changing world around them. Fact 5. The Battle of Montcornet, a rare victory. When Nazi Germany invaded France in 1940, de Gaulle was finally given command of an armored division. At the Battle of Montcornet, he executed one of the few successful French counterattacks, proving that his theories on tank warfare were correct. His tactical brilliance and personal courage in the face of overwhelming odds earned him a promotion to brigadier general. During the heat of battle, he was a pillar of strategic focus. He was always seen in his modest, long-sleeved combat gear and full trousers, providing full coverage as he commanded his tanks from the front lines. This brief but significant victory made him a national symbol of hope, showing the French people that with the right leadership and modern tactics, the enemy was not invincible, even as the rest of the front began to crumble. Fact 6. The Flight to London, Choosing Resistance. As the French government prepared to surrender to Germany, de Gaulle made a life-changing decision. On June 17, 1940, he flew to London with just a few suitcases, refusing to accept the armistice. He believed that France had lost a battle, but not the war. From a small office in the British capital, he declared himself the leader of the Free French forces. This act of legal rebellion was incredibly risky, as he was condemned to death by the Vichy government. Throughout this transition into exile, de Gaulle remained a picture of stoic dignity. He was always seen in his formal, long-sleeved military suits and full trousers, his modest and fully covered appearance reflecting his belief that he carried the entire honor and sovereignty of France on his shoulders, even when he had no army.
Fact 7. The Appeal of June 18. On June 18, 1940, de Gaulle spoke to the people of occupied France via BBC radio. His voice, clear and unyielding, called for all French soldiers and citizens to join him in continued resistance. Whatever happens, he declared, the flame of French resistance must not be extinguished. It was one of the most important speeches in history, turning a lonely general into a global symbol of freedom. During the broadcast and subsequent press meetings, de Gaulle was a model of formal modesty. He wore his long-sleeved military tunic and full trousers, his respectable appearance lending weight to his bold words. He showed the world that a leader's most powerful weapon is not just a sword, but a voice that refuses to be silenced by fear or the shadow of occupation. Fact 8. Building the Free French Forces. Starting with only a few hundred volunteers, de Gaulle tirelessly built the Free French forces into a legitimate military power. He traveled to French colonies in Africa and the Middle East, rallying governors and soldiers to his cause. He had to navigate complex international politics, often clashing with Churchill and Roosevelt to ensure that France was treated as an equal ally. He was a master of diplomatic pressure. During these global travels, de Gaulle was always a figure of disciplined authority. He wore his formal long-sleeved military attire and full trousers, his respectable appearance emphasizing his status as a head of state. He showed that true leadership requires the courage to be difficult when the dignity and future of one's nation are at stake. Fact 9. The Clash with the Big Three. De Gaulle was famously difficult to work with for the Allied leaders, Winston Churchill and Franklin Roosevelt. He insisted on absolute respect for French interests, often refusing to compromise even when his position was weak. Churchill once joked that of all the crosses he had to bear, the heaviest was the Cross of Lorraine, de Gaulle's symbol. De Gaulle believed that if he didn't act like the leader of a great power, France would be ignored. In every high-level meeting, he was a model of formal, modest decorum.
He was always seen in his long-sleeved military suits and full trousers, his respectable appearance emphasizing his status as a head of state. He showed that true leadership requires the courage to be difficult when the dignity and future of one's nation are at stake. Fact 10. The liberation of Paris. In August 1944, following the Allied invasion of Normandy, de Gaulle triumphantly entered a liberated Paris. He famously marched down the Champs-Élysées amidst cheering crowds, despite the threat of hidden snipers. He refused to duck or show fear, walking with a majestic calm that captivated the nation. Then he delivered a powerful speech at the Hôtel de Ville, declaring that Paris had been liberated by its own people with the help of the armies of France. During this historic march, he was the picture of military dignity. He wore his formal long-sleeved military uniform and full trousers, his respectable appearance symbolizing the restoration of national honor and the rebirth of a free and sovereign French Republic.
Fact 11. The architect of the Fourth Republic. Following the liberation, de Gaulle became the head of the provisional government of the French Republic. He worked to rebuild a shattered nation, restoring law and order while ensuring that France regained its seat at the international table. He oversaw the first elections where French women were allowed to vote, a major step forward for the nation's democracy. He was a tireless administrator. During his time in the provisional government, he was always a model of professional modesty. He wore formal, long-sleeved suits and full trousers, his attire fully covering his person and reflecting the serious, disciplined nature of the task of rebuilding a country from the ruins of war, showing that a conqueror must also be a master of civil organization. Fact 12. The quiet withdrawal from power. In 1946, frustrated by the political bickering and the weak structure of the new Fourth Republic, de Gaulle abruptly resigned from power. He believed that the country needed a strong executive branch, not a fragmented parliament. He retired to his country home in Colombey-les-Deux-Églises, beginning what he called the crossing of the desert. During these years of political exile, he remained a figure of quiet dignity. He was seen in his modest, long-sleeved civilian suits and full trousers, his respectable appearance providing a sense of stability and order to a panicked nation. He showed that a leader's true value is often realized in moments of absolute chaos and national despair. Fact 13. The call to return in 1958. By 1958, France was on the brink of civil war due to the conflict in Algeria and the collapse of the Fourth Republic's government. In desperation, the nation turned to the only man they believed could save them, Charles de Gaulle. He agreed to return to power on the condition that he be allowed to write a new constitution. He was the man of the hour. During his return to the public stage, he was a pillar of strategic calm. He appeared in his formal, long-sleeved suits and full trousers, his modest and fully covered appearance providing a sense of stability and order to a panicked nation. He showed that a leader's true value is often realized in moments of absolute chaos and national despair. Fact 14. Founding the Fifth Republic. De Gaulle's greatest political achievement was the creation of the Fifth Republic. He designed a system with a strong presidency, which he believed was necessary to provide France with a stable and effective government. The new constitution was overwhelmingly approved by the French people in a national referendum. This established the political framework that France still uses today. During the signing of the new constitution, de Gaulle was the picture of presidential dignity. He wore formal, long-sleeved attire and full trousers, his respectable appearance reflecting the weight of the new legal order he had created. He proved that a great leader must know when to step back, maintaining his principles even when they lead him into the shadows of private life.
Fact 15. The decolonization of Africa. De Gaulle realized that the era of traditional colonialism was over. In a series of bold moves, he granted independence to the majority of France's African colonies, transforming the French Empire into a community of sovereign nations. This was a difficult and controversial process, but de Gaulle believed it was the only way to ensure France's long-term influence and moral standing in the world. During his diplomatic tours of Africa to manage this transition, he was always a figure of respectful modesty. He wore formal, long-sleeved suits and full trousers, his fully covered appearance reflecting his deep respect for the leaders of the new nations he was helping to create, showing that a great leader must be able to adapt his vision to the changing tides of history. Fact 16. Ending the Algerian War. The conflict in Algeria was the most painful chapter of de Gaulle's presidency. He had to navigate extreme opposition from both the Algerian independence movement and French hardliners who felt betrayed by his decision to grant Algeria independence. He even survived several assassination attempts by those who opposed his peace plan. He remained unyielding in his pursuit of a settlement. Throughout this crisis, he was a model of personal and political courage. He was seen in his formal, long-sleeved formal suits and full trousers, his fully covered appearance lending a sense of official weight to his provocative words, proving that a leader can use his voice to spark movements thousands of miles away.
Fact 17. Vive le Québec libre. During a state visit to Canada in 1967, de Gaulle famously shouted, "Vive le Québec libre, long live free Quebec," from the balcony of Montreal's City Hall. This controversial statement electrified the Quebec sovereignty movement and caused a diplomatic firestorm between France and Canada. It was a classic example of de Gaulle's belief in the self-determination of peoples and his desire to project French influence globally. During the speech and the subsequent diplomatic fallout, he was a picture of unshakable confidence. He wore his formal, long-sleeved presidential suit and full trousers, his modest and fully covered appearance lending a sense of official weight to his provocative words, proving that a leader can use his voice to spark movements thousands of miles away. Fact 18. Developing France's nuclear deterrent. De Gaulle was determined to ensure that France was never again dependent on another power for its defense. He pushed for the development of the force de frappe, France's independent nuclear deterrent. He believed to be truly sovereign, a nation must have the power to protect itself. This policy made France the world's fourth nuclear power. During his inspections of military research facilities, he was a figure of disciplined authority. He was seen in his practical, modest, long-sleeved work attire and full trousers, providing full coverage as he oversaw the technical progress of his nation's security, showing that a leader's primary duty is the absolute protection of his people's future and their independence.
Fact 19. The 1968 student protests. In May 1968, France was paralyzed by massive student protests and workers' strikes that threatened to topple the government. For a moment, it seemed that de Gaulle's era was over. However, after a brief and mysterious trip to meet with military leaders, he returned to Paris and dissolved the National Assembly, calling for new elections. He won a landslide victory, proving that the silent majority of France still trusted his leadership. During these weeks of chaos, he was a pillar of institutional stability. He appeared in his formal, long-sleeved suits and full trousers, his modest and fully covered appearance providing a sense of calm to a nation on the brink, proving that a leader's resilience is most visible when the foundations of his power are being tested. Fact 20. The final resignation and legacy. In 1969, after losing a minor referendum on regional reform, de Gaulle stayed true to his principles and immediately resigned from the presidency. He returned once again to his quiet life in Colombe-les-Deux-Églises, where he spent his final months writing and walking in the countryside. He passed away in 1970, leaving behind a nation that had been completely transformed by his will. He was a man who had built modern France twice. In his final public images, he remained a figure of absolute modesty and dignity. He was dressed in his simple, long-sleeved civilian suits and full trousers, ensuring he was respectfully covered as he stepped into history, a giant who had lived entirely for the honor and the greatness of his country. Fact 21. The mastery of oratory. Charles de Gaulle was not just a leader, he was a master of the French language. He wrote all his own speeches, practicing them for hours to ensure every pause and every tone was perfect. He understood that in politics, words are as powerful as weapons. His televised addresses became national events that stopped the country. In these broadcasts, he was a model of presidential decorum. He was always seen in his formal, long-sleeved suits and full trousers, ensuring he was respectfully covered while he spoke. His attire reflected the seriousness of the state, proving that a leader must use both intellect and appearance to command the attention and respect of a nation. Fact 22. The Great Asparagus in Private. Despite his towering height and stern public image, de Gaulle was a deeply devoted family man. He had a particularly close bond with his youngest daughter, Anne, who had Down syndrome. He was known to sing and play with her, showing a side of tenderness that the public rarely saw. He valued his family's privacy above all else. In his private gardens at Colombey, he was a figure of humble dignity. He was seen in modest, long-sleeved civilian sweaters and full trousers, his attire providing full coverage while he walked with his family. He proved that even the most powerful men in history find their greatest strength in the quiet, modest love of their private lives.
Fact 23. The Franco-German Reconciliation. One of de Gaulle's most visionary acts was the reconciliation between France and West Germany. After centuries of bloody conflict, he and Konrad Adenauer signed the Élysée Treaty in 1963, establishing a permanent partnership between the two nations. This became the foundation of modern Europe. De Gaulle believed that peace required the courage to forgive and the wisdom to build together. During the signing ceremonies, he was a picture of formal modesty. He wore his high-collared, long-sleeved suits and full trousers, his respectable and fully covered appearance symbolizing the dignity of a new era of cooperation, showing that a great leader must be a bridge builder as much as a warrior. Fact 24. The strategic withdrawal from NATO. De Gaulle was fiercely protective of French sovereignty. In 1966, he made the controversial decision to withdraw France from NATO's integrated military command and ordered all American troops to leave French soil. He believed that France must be the master of its own defense and not a servant of foreign powers. This move shocked the Western alliance. Throughout this period of diplomatic tension, de Gaulle remained a pillar of unshakable confidence. He appeared in his formal, long-sleeved presidential suits and full trousers, his respectable and fully covered appearance lending weight to his pronouncements on global affairs. He showed that a leader must adapt to new technologies to ensure his message reaches every corner of the world with dignity and clarity. Fact 25. The first transatlantic televised press conference. De Gaulle was one of the first world leaders to understand and master the medium of television. He held grand press conferences at the Élysée Palace that were broadcast globally. He used these events to project French influence and bypass traditional media filters, speaking directly to the people. He was a master of the camera. In these highly produced events, he was a model of professional modesty. He wore his formal, long-sleeved attire and full trousers, his respectable appearance lending weight to his pronouncements on global affairs. He showed that a leader must adapt to new technologies to ensure his message reaches every corner of the world with dignity and clarity. Fact 26. The Vive le Québec controversy. De Gaulle's vision of Greater France extended to all French-speaking peoples. His support for Quebec's independence during his visit to Canada was not a mistake. It was a calculated move to challenge Anglo-Saxon dominance and promote Francophonia. He saw himself as the protector of the French soul everywhere. During his speeches in Canada, he was a figure of absolute authority. He was dressed in his formal, long-sleeved presidential suit and full trousers, his respectable and fully covered appearance lending weight to his pronouncements on global affairs. He showed that a leader must use his prestige to ignite movements across oceans, always maintaining a disciplined and respectable public image that reflects the gravity of his mission.
Fact 27. The economic miracle. Les Trente Glorieuses. Under de Gaulle's leadership, France experienced a period of unprecedented economic growth known as the 30 Glorious Years. He pushed for massive infrastructure projects, including the development of high-speed trains, nuclear energy, and aerospace technology. He turned France into a modern industrial powerhouse. He was a visionary builder of the state. During his visits to new industrial sites and research centers, he was a model of professional focus. He was always seen in his practical, modest, long-sleeved work attire and full trousers, his appearance reflecting his deep commitment to the physical and technical progress of his nation, showing that a leader's duty is to build the prosperity of the future today. Fact 28. The resistance to the 1961 Putsch. In April 1961, 4 retired generals in Algeria attempted a military coup to prevent de Gaulle from granting independence. The Putsch of the generals was a direct threat to the Republic. De Gaulle appeared on television in his general's uniform, ordering the soldiers not to follow the rebels. His authority alone broke the mutiny. During this crisis, he was a pillar of institutional strength. He wore his formal, long-sleeved military tunic and full trousers, his modest and fully covered appearance reminding every soldier of the sacred duty of loyalty to the state. He proved that a leader's moral authority and his disciplined presence can be more powerful than any weapon used against him. Fact 29. The recognition of Communist China. In 1964, de Gaulle became the first major Western leader to officially recognize the People's Republic of China. He did this against the strong objections of the United States. He believed that ignoring a nation of hundreds of millions was a strategic mistake and that France must pursue its own independent foreign policy. This move changed the global diplomatic landscape. During the official ceremonies and announcements, de Gaulle was a model of formal modesty. He wore his formal, long-sleeved presidential suit and full trousers, his respectable appearance lending a sense of official weight to his pragmatic decision, showing that a great leader must see the world as it is, not as others want it to be. Fact 30. The personal writing of memoirs. De Gaulle was a gifted writer whose war memoirs are considered a masterpiece of 20th century French literature. He viewed himself as much a historian and a man of letters as a man of action. He believed that the written word was the ultimate way to preserve the honor and memory of a nation. During his hours of writing in his study, he was a figure of scholarly focus. He always wore modest, long-sleeved shirts and full trousers, his appearance reflecting his deep respect for the discipline of history. He proved that a leader's legacy is not just written in the blood of battles, but in the ink of the truths he leaves for future generations. Fact 31. The 1965 presidential election. In 1965, de Gaulle became the first president of the Republic to be elected by direct universal suffrage in the modern era. Although he was forced into a second-round runoff, he won decisively, confirming his legitimacy as the people's choice. He proved that even a giant of history must be willing to face the judgment of the voters. During the campaign and the inauguration, he was the picture of presidential dignity. He wore his formal, long-sleeved attire and full trousers, his modest and fully covered appearance commanding respect from kings and presidents alike, proving that a leader's primary duty is to project the strength and the dignity of his nation to the entire world. Fact 32. The Grand Dessein, the Great Design. De Gaulle's great design was to make France the leading power in a Europe of nations that could act as a third force between the United States and the Soviet Union. He was a tireless advocate for European independence and French prestige on the world stage. He traveled to South America,
Asia and Eastern Europe to build new alliances. During these grand international tours, he was always a figure of disciplined authority. He wore his formal, long-sleeved presidential suits and full trousers, his modest and fully covered appearance commanding respect from kings and presidents alike, proving that a leader's primary duty is to project the strength and the dignity of his nation to the entire world.
Fact 33. The 1968 crisis, the final battle. The protests of May 1968 were the most significant domestic challenge of de Gaulle's presidency. For a few weeks, it seemed the country was slipping into anarchy. De Gaulle's decision to dissolve the assembly and call for elections was a masterstroke that saved the republic. He proved that order can be restored through the legal and democratic process. Throughout the riots and the strikes, he was a pillar of institutional stability. He appeared in his formal, long-sleeved suits and full trousers, his modest and fully covered appearance providing a sense of calm to a nation in chaos, showing that a leader's resilience is his greatest asset when the foundations of society are being shaken.
Fact 34. The principles of Gaullism. The political ideology known as Gaullism remains a powerful force in France today. It is built on the principles of national independence, a strong state, and social progress through order. De Gaulle believed that France could only be truly France if it was great. He instilled a sense of pride and self-reliance in the French people that lasted for generations. During his meetings with young politicians and advisors, he was a figure of mentor-like authority. He was always seen in his modest, long-sleeved professional suits and full trousers, his respectable appearance commanding respect from kings and presidents alike, proving that a leader's primary duty is to project the strength and the dignity of his nation to the entire world.
Fact 35. His final resignation. The man of honor. In April 1969, after the people rejected a relatively minor referendum on regional reform, de Gaulle stayed true to his own high standards and immediately resigned. He said, "If the people do not want me, I will go." He refused to cling to power for a single day longer. This act of political honor was rare in history. He left the Élysée Palace without ceremony. In his final departure, he was a model of quiet dignity. He was dressed in his modest, long-sleeved civilian suit and full trousers, his fully covered appearance reflecting his submission to the democratic will of the nation he had served twice in its darkest hours. Fact 36. Retirement at Colombe-les-Deux-Églises. After leaving the presidency, de Gaulle retired to his modest home in Colombe-les-Deux-Églises. He spent his time walking in the countryside, reading, and finishing his final volume of memoirs. He refused any pension or state salary, living only on his military pension and book royalties. He wanted to be a simple citizen of the nation he had led. During these final months, he was a figure of humble focus. He was always seen in his simple, long-sleeved civilian suits and full trousers, ensuring he was respectably covered while he engaged with his neighbors. He proved that a great leader's final victory is the ability to return to a modest and disciplined life with peace and dignity. Fact 38. The sudden death of a giant. On November 9, 1970, Charles de Gaulle passed away suddenly while playing a game of solitaire at his home. He was 79 years old. The nation was shocked, and President Pompidou famously announced, "General de Gaulle is dead. France is a widow." His passing marked the end of an era. He died as he had lived, without fuss and with absolute personal discipline. He was prepared for his final rest with the same modesty he showed in life, his body covered in the long-sleeved attire of a man who had dedicated every moment of his existence to the honor and the greatness of the French Republic. Fact 38. The world in mourning.
De Gaulle had requested a simple funeral in his village, but world leaders from across the globe gathered in Paris at Notre Dame for a grand memorial service. Kings, presidents, and generals from every continent came to pay their respects to the man who had stood up to the giants of the 20th century. Thousands of people, dressed in their dark, modest robes and suits, gathered in the streets. The global mourning reflected the immense respect he had earned through his unyielding principles. He was a figure of universal significance, a modest man in long-sleeved attire who had forced the world to acknowledge the dignity and the independence of his beloved France.
Fact 39. The Charles de Gaulle Airport and Carrier, majestic and enduring, highlighting his modern legacy. Today, de Gaulle's name is immortalized in France's largest airport and its only nuclear-powered aircraft carrier. These symbols of global connection and military power are a fitting tribute to a man who wanted France to be at the center of the world. His legacy is literally built into the infrastructure of the nation. He is the standard by which all subsequent French presidents are measured. He remains an eternal model of leadership, a modest figure in long-sleeved attire, whose vision and will turned a defeated nation into a global superpower, reminding us that with discipline and pride, any nation can rise from the ashes of history. Fact 40. The spirit of France forever. Final, grand and emotional, the ultimate conclusion. Charles de Gaulle remains the soul of modern France. He proved that a single individual's courage can change the course of world events. He was a man of the sword and the law, a leader who understood that national greatness requires both military strength and moral integrity. As we look back on his life, we see a giant who never faltered and never compromised. He will forever be the general of the Free French, a modest figure in long-sleeved attire, standing at the summit of history, reminding us that true greatness is found in the absolute devotion to one's nation and the unyielding pursuit of its honor and independence.